Hey everybody, how's it going? Happy Wednesday to you. As Brian Gutekunst actually took to the podium today and had a press conference talking about all things Packers. He is required once a year to do one in-season appearance, and so he must have been planning on today to be that day. We could also talk about the Rasul Douglas trade as well as the injury report, because after all, the Packers did actually practice today in amongst all of this Brian Gutekunst conversation, Rasul Douglas trade, etc., etc. So, first of all, the limited participants from practice today. There were a couple, although this list is overall getting shorter. One would be Jair Alexander. Another, Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones actually, something noteworthy today in practice, wore a red non-contact jersey, normally reserved for quarterbacks. So that was noteworthy. But when asked about Aaron Jones specifically, Matt LaFleur said that there are no concerns there. It's more just precautionary at this point than anything. They just don't want him taking extra hits that he doesn't have to while he's still healing. Fair enough. Also limited was Elton Jenkins, Luke Musgrave, and Yash Nyman. Yash still battling that foot injury that he suffered in last week's game, as he looks to become the starting left tackle, at least for this week, maybe the rest of the season. We're going to have to see what direction it goes, but first he has to get his foot healthy first. So not too many injuries today. You can tell that list is getting shorter, still longer than you want it to be for a team that's already had its bye week. Now, talking Brian Gutekunst and the press conference that was. Lots of headlines coming out of this press conference. Basically, the feel that I got, just as a 30,000-foot view, is general manager Brian Gutekunst is frustrated with the state of the team thus far. They were obviously expecting to be more successful than they have been to this point. And in assigning blame when reporters are kind of prodding him to get him to do that, he basically said it's on everyone. It's, coaches, players, everyone included. Everyone has to be better, kind of stealing the phrase from Matt LaFleur there. So, different things to keep in mind. Let's talk Jordan Love. He was asked about Jordan Love, and I know ESPN Adam Schefter immediately ran with a tweet and a headline saying, Brian Gutekunst unsure if Jordan Love is the future quarterback for the Green Bay Packers. That's not really what Gutekunst said. Goody was asked quite a few times about Jordan Love, and each time Gutekunst basically said, it's hard to evaluate the quarterback given the state of everything around him. We know that he's done some nice things, but on the whole, the entire unit has to improve. Fair enough. And not quite the damning headline that ESPN and I saw Sleeper Fantasy and others have chosen to run with. So, hey, Chris, how you doing? No injuries is good. Now let's make sure Jack Frost don't get people sick. Yeah, right. Like, this is the time of year when you hear about like a flu running rampant through a locker room. And Chris, I don't know if we talked before about if you live in Wisconsin or not, but like, it's gross. It's frosty. We got a bunch of snow where I live yesterday. Just stupid for Halloween. So, other than that, he was asked about Jordan Love. In addition to that, like I mentioned, Gutekunst did take several jabs to needing to see results before the end of the year. He said there's still 10 weeks left in the season and that they need to see improvement. They need to start seeing results, not just the process over the final 10 weeks. And if you ask my opinion on the matter, because I kind of got that, there was a lot of discussion on Twitter right after the press conference. And it's basically like I walked away feeling like, okay, like LaFleur feels safe. I mean, like getting maybe a little warm, but overall, LaFleur feels safe based upon Goody's comments, even though Goody's obviously disappointed. But the rest of the coaching staff, I can't say that with any form of certainty at all. When asked about the defense specifically, Brian Gutekunst basically said, we haven't seen the consistency there, just like last year. Which sounds a lot like quite a few comments that started to be made towards the end of Mike Pettine's tenure. So, granted, we don't know what Joe Barry's contract status is. Of course, he could always be fired in the offseason, whatever the case may be. But Brian Gutekunst had these shades of not exactly being thrilled with the entirety of the coaching staff, even if Matt LaFleur himself gets a pass this year. My presumption that I've been operating under for a bit now is even if Matt LaFleur is safe, even if he gets another year, which I do think he will, what we may see is a coaching restructure around him, or the type of conversation with Matt LaFleur that goes, hey, we want to keep you on as head coach. given that you make a number of changes here. It's entirely possible. We'll see what the offseason brings. And then talking Rasul Douglas and that trade. I mean, from everyone in the locker room, the post-practice reports put out by Cassidy Hill and other beat reporters, everyone is disappointed in Rasul Douglas being traded, exactly as I would expect them to be. For the players in the locker room, that's their friend. That was one of the leaders on the team. For the young guys, that's one of the guys that they went to with questions. So, yeah, they're disappointed that their friend, the playmaker on the defense, is gone. When referencing that, Brian Gutekunsts basically talked about, hey, we got a top 100 pick. We miss Rasul. We're going to miss his intangibles, his leadership. But once that was on the table, we were able to get a top 100 pick plus $7 million basically in cap room next year, which is a valuable resource for us as well. It became too much to pass up. Let's take a look here. Kempton, boy, hello to you. Sounds like Joe Barry is more on the hot seat than LaFleur. I want him gone the most. I agree 1,000% with you. I think Barry is very much on a hotter seat than LaFleur because LaFleur, like, they're going to give the benefit of the doubt if you've had these winning seasons, etc. Barry doesn't have that. He doesn't have that benefit of the doubt, that added in cushion. So I think Joe Barry's seat is quite a bit warmer than Matt LaFleur's. And it was interesting. I saw someone on Twitter mention that, like, we don't know Joe Barry's contract status. If you remember with Mike Pettin, they didn't exactly fire Mike Pettin. It was just that his contract ran out. And then everyone was able to go, mutual parting of ways. We're going to go get somebody else. Maybe this is Joe Barry's last year on his deal, and then they're going to do a mutual parting of the ways. Ultimately, we don't know because coach contracts aren't exactly out there. But yeah, we'll have to see. I very much agree with your sentiment. Chris And saying, and he still hasn't even had the Coach of the Year award. And it's well-deserved for him, too. Back then, till the sheriff left. Yeah, right. There were a couple of years there where LaFleur was in serious contention for Coach of the Year. Probably should have gotten Coach of the Year at least one of those years, probably like 2020 specifically, if not 2019, his first year at the helm. So, yeah, he's got some benefit of the doubt that's going to be left over for him a wee bit. One thing that I want to talk about with the Rasul Douglas trade, like, this did not enter my mind at all yesterday. Going through different parts of this, haven't really seen it talked about. But the truth is, Brian Gutekunsts, in his press conference today, he talked about how moving on from Rasul Douglas, 29-year-old corner, getting older, more expensive contract, basically opens up snaps for younger players that they want to see play. And I mentioned that in like the trade deadline primer video, that's one of the categories that is going to be evaluated in the Packers trading guys, right? Makes sense. Get rid of an old dude. Young dudes can play. I just didn't see it as a big thing with corner, but I wasn't taking into account the fact that Eric Stokes would have to have his 5th-year option picked up this summer. Right, because you have to activate that 5th-year option following a player's 3rd year. And it's hard to say. Stokes had an excellent rookie year, then a little bit of a step back sophomore year, and then obviously a lost junior year to this point. So the question now becomes, okay, what is Eric Stokes? Is he like his rookie year? Is he like that 2nd year? We just don't know. So we need to make sure that his spot is open for him when he inevitably returns, because we got to make a very expensive financial decision on Stokes very soon. Pair that with the fact that they've got 7th-round pick Carrington Valentine, who they want to get on the field more for evaluation purposes. And yeah, playing youth did come into the conversation into whether they should trade Rasul Douglas or not. So when you're looking at the entirety of that trade, basically, the Packers are able to get a top 100 pick, clear about $7 million in cap space next year, and create an opportunity for Stokes and Valentine to play more for the cost of the locker room intangibles and your number 2 corner. As Brian Gutekunsts mentioned, it became too appealing of an offer to just pass up. Looking ahead to the draft, though, now you got a team with a 1st-round pick, 2 2nd-round picks, 2 3rd-round picks, and what will likely become 2 4th-round picks as well. That's a heck of a lot of ammunition for a rebuilding team. And I know the initial gut check, and I think some people were kidding, some people weren't, was, they had to trade him for a 3rd when Gutekunsts and Ted Thompson couldn't draft to save their lives. Well, They very well might not use that third in the third. It could be they're going to package the two thirds to get back up into the second. Could be that it's a supplemental addition to a trade for some flexibility in the first. We just don't know. However, for a rebuilding team, the more draft assets you get, the better off you're going to be when it comes to draft time. So, I mean, it sucks. And the locker room was certainly feeling it today. They were talking about losing their friend, losing their leader. But it's fairly shrewd, and there are benefits for the organization to have right now by making that move. So, a very, very interesting Brian Gutekunst press conference today. Went on for, I want to say, like a half hour. You know, one thing that I did see a lot of people talking about was Josh Myers, the center. Yeah, Stenavich said it the other day, and it created a bunch of headlines that Josh Myers is playing better football than he's ever played in his career. And then Brian Gutekunst basically said today that Josh Myers is playing the best football he's seen in his career. And people are like baffled by this. And I get it. Like, there's been some rough moments. There's been rough moments throughout the entirety of Josh Myers' career. Like, certainly there have been. It's probably a stretch to say this is the best football of his career, but like, my viewpoint on this is, hey, Josh Myers this year is basically what Josh Myers has been every year. The one that's taken a significantly larger step backward is actually John Runyon Jr. at right guard. And there's no real heat on him. There's no like talk of benching him, but it's true. John Runyon Jr. has always been an above average pass pro guard and then deficient in the run game. But this year, he's not even above average or even really average at pass pro. Josh Myers has at least maintained that level of play. So, I mean, yeah, it probably was an overly positive comment to make by Goot to say that Myers is playing better than he's ever played. But, I mean, he's not necessarily the one that deserves all the heat on the offensive line. Hey, Nick saying maybe using someone else's third will get a good pick. It's worth a shot. It's like the Packers are so bad at drafting the third round. Maybe if we just start using other people's picks, it's worth a shot. What else can you try, right? So, one other like noteworthy thing from the press conference that I wanted to mention was some people are really taking Gutekunst to task right now for seemingly contrary comments. One, Brian Gutekunst was asked about, Jordan Love and how he's performed, and if the Packers wind up with the top 5 pick, are they going to be taking a quarterback? And Gutekunst basically didn't want to answer that, pretty understandably honest. And he kind of backed up and just said, hey, the number one priority right now is just beating the Rams. They're coming up this weekend. We got to beat the Rams. Okay, fair enough. And then Jason Wilde kind of pressed on that and said, hey, if your number one priority is beating the Rams, why'd you trade away Rasul Douglas? Doesn't that make it harder to beat the Rams? Yeah, Brian Gutekunst was towing the line between immediate need and future asset. And basically what this says to me is, yeah, everyone in the locker room, everyone in the organization right now is focused on beating the Rams. But it's not a black and white picture. Basically, Brian Gutekunst is saying, hey, in a lost year, us being able to acquire a top 100 pick and cap relief is more important than making a game against the Rams moderately more difficult. And you got to make these moves at the deadline. You don't control the schedule. It's not like they wanted to move Rasul before Cooper Kupp and Puka come to town. They would have much rather had Rasul for that. But at the end of the day, the top 100 pick outweighs the fact that, yeah, maybe this game got slightly more difficult to do. But at the same time, the Packers now also get to evaluate Carrington Valentine against a truly elite receiver. Because Valentine's gotten beaten for some catches this year, but quite a few of those catches, he's been right on his man. He's been picked on a certain amount whenever he's played. He's been there. It's just they've been good throws or routes that you're just not going to beat. So things to keep in mind there as well. Now, I know there's a lot of thoughts out there, a lot of comments about Brian Gutekunst in this press conference. And the topic of whether you feel Brian Gutekunst is doing a good job as GM or not is a much larger conversation. But In the context of this press conference, in my opinion, he basically said all of the things you'd expect him to say. Yeah, we can't really evaluate Love yet. It's only been 7 games. We got 10 more to go. Those 10 are just as important as the 7 we've done. And it's hard to evaluate him when everything is falling apart around him. Okay, fair enough. We have not gotten the results we've expected yet to this year. We trust that the process is going well. We know guys are working hard to turn it around. So let's turn it around. Okay, fair enough. In terms of Rasul Douglas, the price was just too good to pass up. Okay, fair enough. Like, I know some people walked out of that press conference being terribly upset. And I guess I just wasn't one of them, because it was kind of like, yeah, everything fell right into expectation of what you would think he would say. The most noteworthy thing for me was, again, him kind of prodding, him continuing to say the defense, like last year, hasn't been consistent. That's now 2 years. That's part of Joe Barry's evaluation. But he's also saying the results have to get better. He dropped that a few times. And that's not nothing coming from Brian Gutekunst. If this were truly a year where everyone is blanketed safe, he's probably not talking the results have to get better. He's going to say we're continuing on with the process. So maybe a little something to be gleaned there from Brian Gutekunst. So I can hang around for a couple more minutes. If there are any questions out there about the Packers roster, anything from Brian Gutekunst today, don't be afraid to just drop them in the comments. Let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to be getting on out of here. The next topic, or the next video, is going to be put out on Friday. That would be the game preview against the Rams. And then this coming weekend, there is going to be a watch party again for Packers versus Rams at noon. It'll be me. And then Claudia will be joining us for the second half. No Packer fan should have to watch a game alone if they don't want to. So we'll be here. Come hang out for the watch party on Sunday if that's what you'd like to do here on the YouTube channel. So with nothing else, I do believe I'm going to be getting out of here on this cold and dreary and just silly Wednesday. Hope everybody has a good day, has a good night. And as always, go Pack Go.